Business Incorporated revisits the auto policy of the federal government. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Olusegun Aganga, has hinted that a finance scheme will be launched in the next 4 months that will assist Nigerians buy locally manufactured cars.
Because of the nature of the industry, you have different tariff levels for different components. So for anyone that is actually investing in car assembly in the country, that is creating jobs in the country, they normally will bring in what you call CKDs, SKDs. CKDs is 0% duty.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. I am Bolaji Akinwale. We'll bring all of this and more on the program. You don't want to miss it. But first, let's take a look at some business headlines that made the rounds during the week. A U.S. court has summoned the Asset Management Company of Nigeria, AMCON, in a dispute with a U.S. financial firm, Intergis Holdings, which accuses AMCON of ignoring its right to buy Main Street Bank, one of the nationalized banks. Intergis wants the court to enforce its claim over Afribank, which was nationalized in 2010 and renamed Main Street Bank after coming close to collapse. Intergis says it sealed agreement to acquire a majority stake in Afribank before it was liquidated and its assets were transferred to Main Street Bank, but it expected Main Street to be bound by those agreements. AMCON, which has managed Main Street Bank and 2 other lenders until they can be recapitalized and sold, says it's not concerned by the case because Intergis's demand applied to the defunct Afribank, not Main Street Bank. The House of Representatives has endorsed the new cement policy and the usage of 42.5 MPa grade cement for standard construction works in Nigeria. The resolution was passed following the adoption of the 2-page report of the ad hoc committee on composition and pigmentation of cement, which investigated the incidence of collapsed buildings in the country. The lawmakers also asked the Governing Council of Standard Organization of Nigeria to ensure that all cement manufacturers in Nigeria retool and upgrade their production lines to start producing the 42.5 MPa grade within a reasonable time, considering the cost of social dislocation. They also advocated for creation of a cement fund from the contributions of 10 naira per 50 kg bag of cement produced in Nigeria and 20 naira only per 50 kg of cement imported into Nigeria for the establishment of state-of-the-art laboratories in all the geopolitical zones within the period of 3 years. They asked that the fund should be jointly managed by a task force to be set up by SON, Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, and Nigerian Institute of Building. The Central Bank of Nigeria has released new directives on the issuance of credit facilities by financial institutions. This, according to the Apex Bank, is to avoid a build-up of non-performing loans, which could negatively impact liquidity in the financial sector and ultimately hamper its stability. The 8-point directive, which took effect from July 1, include that no institution shall, without the prior written approval of the CBN, grant a facility to a potential borrower who is in default of any existing facility to the tune of 500 million naira and above in the case of deposit money banks, and 250 million naira and above in the case of development banks and banks in liquidation. No institution shall, except with the prior written approval of the CBN, grant a facility to any potential borrower who has a delinquent facility of any amount whatsoever which has been taken over by the Asset Management Company of Nigeria. All institutions are also reminded that it is mandatory to perform credit checks on a potential borrower on CRMS and from at least 2 credit bureaus. Meanwhile, the CBN says the prohibition threshold may be reviewed by the CBN from time to time with the aim of inculcating responsible and appropriate credit culture in borrowers.
We will go on a break and we'll be back with more on the program. For a long time, Nigerians have had to pay a lot of money to buy imported used cars. But recently, there was an issue of increased tariff and levy on these cars. Well, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Olusegun Aganga, cleared the air on the controversy surrounding the federal government's auto policy in this interview. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for your time with us on the program. First of all, there is the allegation that the federal government has increased the tariff on imported used cars to 70%. Is it true?
I thought we would have started by congratulating the federal government for the remarkable progress we've made only in 7 months since that policy was introduced in October this year. And we've had remarkable success. I'll come back to that later. But in terms of clarification, and I think that's very important, it is not true. It's a misunderstanding, and that article is actually very misleading. It's not true that the tariff for used cars is now 70%. That's not true. It remains 35%. That's number one. The second allegation that all new cars coming to the country today, that the tariff is 70%, is also misleading and not true. As we've made very, very clear when the policy was introduced, because of the nature of the industry, you have different tariff levels for different components. So for anyone that is actually investing in car assembly in the country, that is creating jobs in the country, they normally will bring in what you call CKDs, SKDs. CKDs is 0% duty. And we've started implementing that in January, not July. That's why Nissan was able to assemble their first cars in April. They also bring in, CKDs are completely knocked down parts. Now they also bring in SKDs. SKDs are semi-knocked down parts. And then 2 stages, SKD1, SKD2. SKD1 is 5% duty. We started implementing that since January. SKD2 is 10% because there's a bit of value addition when you bring that in. We started implementing that also in January this year. Now we realize that there will be a gap between local production and the demand in the country. To encourage local production, we said for those that are producing locally, they will be able to import cars to meet that gap based on their local production at 35%. So anyone buying cars in the country, the maximum will be 35. But bear in mind that these people also have brought in CKDs at 0%, SKDs at 5%, SKD2 at 10%. So the blended rate is only between 20 and 25%. That was why, when we were working together to develop the policy, that Association of Auto Manufacturers in Nigeria, gave an undertaking that there would be no price increase. And that was why, when that article came out 2 days ago, they issued a press statement saying none of their members will or plan to increase prices. And there's no reason for that. And in fact, what they told me is that the new cars were imported last year, roughly about 50,000. Because we delayed the implementation of the full policy until 1st of July, cars, about 37,000 cars have been imported into the country up to the end of May. So really, there's so many cars in the country. So what we're encouraging them to do is to let Nigerians know which cars and where they are and where they can buy them. So if there's anyone at all out there that has increased the prices of a car, if you look at the commercial, there's no reason why anyone will buy a car that's priced at 5 million, 4 million, when you can buy the same car or similar car at 2 or 3 million. So the idea is, so it's not true, it's misleading and it's not correct.
We understand that a finance scheme for made in Nigeria cars will be launched in 4 months' time. Can you tell us more about this?
As part of developing the market for automobile, therefore supporting the investments of those in the sector and making sure that Nigerians can actually afford cars, we thought we had to change that culture where you had to pay cash to buy cars because it's not proper. No country does that. So we have been working with local and international banks who have been supporting the industry. Luckily, one of them is a bank from South Africa that actually finances 1 in every 3 cars produced in South Africa. So they know the industry in and out, and they play a lot across the value chain in the auto sector. So we're working with them to develop a scheme for cars that are assembled in Nigeria, again to help increase the productivity for job creation, and of course to reduce the pressure on for reserves and all that. The whole idea is that we are almost there, and the terms we are negotiating is a 4-year vehicle purchase scheme at around approximately 10% interest rate. Now, when you compare that, when you go to the market today, minimum you get is at least above 20%. We're doing that also deliberately to help those who rely on used car markets. Because our research tells us that the 2 main reasons why people use used cars, there are other reasons, but the 2 main reasons are because there are no affordable cars in the country and because they have to pay cash. Now, with this scheme in place, the problem of paying cash goes away. Now, in terms of affordable cars, we are encouraging all the OEMs to prioritize the assembly of affordable cars. That was why when Nissan started the assembly in April, they did SUV, commercial cars, but saloon cars that are priced between 1.7 and 2.3 million. Hyundai is going to assemble theirs in July. It will be cheaper than the 1.7. Peugeot prioritized it. When they relaunched Peugeot Automobile under the new auto policy, they commissioned the production of Peugeot 301. So those are the things, 2 ways we're trying to address. And for them, it's important that they capture the used car market as well. So the incentive is there for them to produce affordable cars.